Hello everyone. Thank you all for watching the video. Wishing you all good health and peace. The dawn slipped over the mountains, its light a soft whisper through mist that draped the hills like a lover's sigh. Lai Tusi stirred, her breath a faint cloud in the morning's chill, as roosters crowed, their calls piercing the hush of a world still half asleep. She rose, her bare feet brushing the cool earth of their bamboo house, and knelt by the hearth. Her hands, weathered by years of labor, fed twigs to the fire, coaxing flames that flickered like fragile dreams. A pot of rice porridge simmered, its earthy scent a quiet vow for her daughter Han, who slept under a quilt, her small form curled against the dawn's bite. A Sin, her husband, had left before first light, his shadow long gone down the valley road where work beckoned. The day stretched ahead, woven from toil and tenderness, yet Lai Tusi's heart held a stillness, as if waiting for a melody yet to play. Their home clung to a hillside, its bamboo walls etched with time's patient hand, a fragile haven against the mountain's whims. Each morning Lai Tusie walked the cornfields, her knife slicing stalks for the chickens, or gathered greens for the market, her steps steady on trails worn deep by years. Han, barely 3, trailed her, her laughter a spark as she tossed crumbs to the geese, her tiny hands eager for the world's wonders. Lai Tusa watched her, a smile softening her lips, but her eyes carried shadows, memories of winters when hunger lingered, of nights when Han's cries echoed in a house too quiet, of a Sin's absence when his past had caged him far from her reach. Those years had shaped her, a tree rooted deep yet scarred by storms, her strength a quiet fire beneath her calloused skin. That morning the air was crisp, the cornfield golden under a sky streaked with clouds. Lai Tusie moved through the rows, her hands deft, the stalks falling under her blade. Han scampered nearby, chasing a stray chick, her giggles weaving through the rustle of leaves. Lai Tusie paused, wiping sweat from her brow, her thoughts drifting to a Sin. He'd been gone days, working in the valley, his letters sparse but steady, promising a better season. She felt his absence a hollow ache, yet trusted his vow, to build a life less brittle than the one they held. Today felt ordinary, another turn of the sun, and she hadn't marked it as her birthday, the date buried under the weight of chores and care. She returned to the house, a basket of corn heavy on her shoulder, Han clutching her skirt. The fire burned low, its smoke curling like a sigh. Lai Tusi fed the chickens, her movements sure, her mind adrift. She thought of the market, of greens to sell, of Han's shoes wearing thin. She thought, too, of a Sin, his hands hauling bricks under a valley sun, his voice promising return. Her heart held a fragile weave, hope for his dreams, fear for his safety, and a resolve to carry their home, as she always had. Han tugged her hand, pointing to a butterfly, its wings a flicker of color, and Lai Tusi smiled, the moment a fleeting balm. The day unfolded, slow and warm, the sun climbing high. Lai Tusi walked to the market, her basket balanced, Han skipping beside her. The trail wound past streams that gurgled secrets, past fields where buffalo grazed under a sky heavy with promise. At the market voices hummed, vendors calling, coins clinking, the air thick with fish and spice. Lai Tusie sold her greens, her hands quick, her smile polite but distant. She haggled for a small fish, a treat for Han, and lingered a moment, watching women barter, their laughter sharp, their burdens unspoken. She felt a kinship, yet a solitude, her thoughts tethered to the mountain, to a Sin's absence, to Han's small hand in hers. Back home she tended the garden, her hoe breaking earth, the soil cool beneath her fingers. Han played, her chatter a soft rhythm, her hands piling pebbles into towers that toppled and rose again. The grandmother Milan arrived, her steps slow but warm, her arms open for Han. She'd come to help, her presence a quiet thread in their patchwork life. Lai Tusie greeted her, grateful yet felt a pang. Milana's eyes held memories of old wounds, of times when words had cut deep, when trust had frayed like a worn rope. They worked together, shelling corn, their silence comfortable but heavy, the past a shadow that lingered but didn't speak. Milan hummed a tune from her youth and Han clapped, her joy a bridge across the years. As noon passed, Lai Tusie walked the cornfield again, checking for overlooked stalks, her hands brushing the leaves, their texture rough against her skin. She thought of the seasons they'd endured, floods that stole crops, droughts that cracked the earth, yet always they'd risen, planting anew. She thought of a Sin, his hands once soft, now hardened by labor, his heart once lost, now steady. She wondered what he carried today. Hope? Or the weight of a valley that didn't know their names? Her steps slowed, her gaze lifting to the hills, their peaks softened by mist, a reminder of home's beauty and its limits. Dusk neared, the sky softening, a bruise of purple spreading over the hills. Lai Tuxie lit the hearth, the flames casting warmth across the room. Han napped, her small form sprawled on a mat, her breath a gentle rise and fall. Milan sat nearby, her hands folding a scarf, her gaze distant, as if tracing memories of her own. Lai Tuxie stirred the fish soup, its scent mingling with smoke, her thoughts turning inward. She hadn't counted her years, hadn't marked the day she was born. Birthdays were luxuries eclipsed by survival, and she'd let this one slip, a pebble lost in a stream's flow. Then came a sound, footsteps, heavy but hurried, crunching the path outside. Lai Tuxie paused, her ladle still, her heart quickening. The door swung open, and Asin stood there, his face flushed, his shirt dusty from the valley's roads. In his hands, a box, its edges worn but tied with care, and a small sack slung over his shoulder. Han woke, her eyes bright, her voice a chirp. "Papa!" she cried, running to him, and he knelt, lifting her, his laughter rough but warm, his arms a haven she burrowed into. Lai Tuxie stared, her breath caught, a question forming in her eyes, her hands trembling just enough to betray her calm. "Tuxie," Asin said, his voice soft, a smile breaking through his weariness. "It's your birthday. Did you forget?" Her hand rose to her mouth, a gasp escaping. She'd lost the date, buried it under cornstalks and market trails, but Asin hadn't. He set the box down, a cake, its icing white as mountain mist, studded with fruit like jewels. From the sack, he drew a pair of shoes, simple but sturdy, their leather gleaming faintly in the firelight. Lai Tuxie's eyes stung, her throat tight. She looked at him, seeing the man who'd walked miles, who'd hauled bricks and faced thieves, who'd carried this moment home to her. She saw, too, the man who'd once faltered, whose absence had left her to stitch their life alone, yet stood here now, his heart laid bare in the gifts he offered. "You didn't have to," she murmured, her voice trembling, her fingers brushing the cake's edge, its sweetness a marvel she hadn't dared dream. "For you," he said, his gaze steady, his hand reaching for hers, warm and sure. "For us." Han clapped, her joy a spark that lit the room, her small hands reaching for the cake, her giggle a melody that danced with the fire's crackle. Milan rose, her smile soft, her hands reaching for the box, as if to anchor the moment. "A fine thing," she said, her voice warm, the past's weight lifting like mist under sun. They gathered around the table, the hearth's glow painting their faces in gold, a circle of light against the gathering dark. Lai Tuxie lit candles, their flames small but fierce, and Han tugged Asin's sleeve, her eyes wide. "Blow, mama!" she urged, and Lai Tuxie laughed, a sound rare and bright, her breath mingling with Han's as the candles flickered out, their smoke curling like a wish unspoken. They ate, the cake sweet on their tongues, its richness a marvel after days of rice and greens. Asin spoke, his voice low, of the valley, work found at a construction site, wages earned through sweat and grit, a deal struck for their orange grove. 15 million, he said, his eyes meeting hers, a mix of pride and unease shadowing his face. For Han's school, for a better roof, for days we don't fear the rain. Lai Tuxie nodded, her heart a tangle of gratitude and loss. The grove was theirs, a piece of their story, its trees witnesses to their labor and love. Its sale was a bridge to something new, yet a severance, a root pulled from the earth. She thought of its oranges glowing under moonlight, and wondered what they'd plant in their place. Milan shared stories, her voice weaving tales of old festivals, of lanterns floating on rivers, of nights when the village danced under stars. Han listened, her eyes wide, her fingers sticky with icing, her laughter a thread that bound them. Lai Tuxie watched, her chest full, yet a quiet question stirred. Asin would leave again, his work unfinished, his path fraught with risks she couldn't name. She thought of the bruise he'd earned, chasing thieves for strangers, of the valley's pull, both promise and threat. She thought of the grove, soon another's, and of the mountain, which had cradled them but could no longer hold their dreams. After supper, Lai Tuxie walked to the grove, her steps slow, the night air cool against her skin. The trees stood silent, their fruit a faint gleam under the crescent moon. She touched a branch, its leaves whispering memories of planting with Asin, their hands moving as one, of Han's first steps beneath their shade, her laughter mingling with the wind. The grove was their heart, yet its sail was their hope, a sacrifice for Han's future. She stood, her breath visible, her heart heavy with love and letting go. She thought of Asin's gifts, the cake, the shoes, his presence, and felt a warmth fragile but fierce, like a seed stirring beneath frost. Back in the house, Han slept, her small hand clutching a crumb of cake, her breath soft as starlight. Asin sat by the fire, his face softened, his eyes distant, tracing paths only he could see. Milan hummed, her scarf finished, her presence a quiet anchor. Lai Tusie touched Asin's shoulder, a silent vow, and he covered her hand with his, warm and sure, their fingers entwined like roots beneath earth. The hearth glowed, its light spilling across the bamboo walls, the empty box, the shoes waiting for dawn. Tomorrow Asin would go, his steps carrying their dreams, and Lai Tusie would stay, her hands tending what remained, Han, the chickens, the garden, the embers of their life. Night deepened, the moon rising higher, its glow pale against the dark. Lai Tusie stepped outside, the air cool, the stars sharp overhead. The mountain loomed, its silence vast, the valley hidden beyond its folds. She gazed down the path Asin had walked, then up at the sky, where the moon watched, quiet and knowing. This birthday, bright with cake and laughter, was a gift, a moment carved from hardship, but what would tomorrow ask? She thought of Han, her daughter's life a seed yet to bloom, and of Asin, his strength tempered by scars, his heart set on proving himself. For them she'd carry on, but what would that carrying cost? She lingered, the scent of corn and smoke lingering, the grove's whisper faint in the breeze. The stars held no answers, only light, and Lai Tusie let the stillness hold her, a breath before the day's demands. Somewhere in the valley's hum, Asin's future waited, a rhythm of hope and risk, and here on the mountain, Lai Tusie's heart beat steady, a fragile bridge between joy and the questions that remained. Would this happiness endure, or would it slip, like moonlight through bamboo, leaving only shadows to trace?